I'm Tass Mellis of The Starters.
This is Ben Golliver with the Open Floor Podcast.
Hi, I'm Kristen Ludlow from NBA Inside Stuff.
I'm OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors.
Hey, I'm Elena Donan, and welcome to the Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Double Clutch NBA Podcast. I am one of your usual hosts. My name's Matthew Wellington. I'm joined tonight once again by Joe Hulbert.
Hi there, Matt. How's it going?
I'm very, very, very well. I've spent half the day watching the Raptors Championship parade, and they are very, 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 very behind schedule. Not great organisation over there. And we've also actually got Mike Miller.
Hello. The Raptors are the NBA champions, and this guy is fun.
Board man gets paid.
Board man gets paid. I don't know how to stop this now. I had this saved up ready for the last pod, which we couldn't use because they didn't win.
They didn't win. They didn't, but they have one now. But before we get on to discussing the Raptors Championship and, of course, the Anthony Davis trade, we have got a little bit of housekeeping to do. A couple of things on the Double Clutch website the last week or so. Please go check them out. Sean Guest wrote about Game 5 of the NBA Finals and how that gave us a glimpse of the series that we might have seen, obviously with Durant playing so well in the first sort of quarter and a bit of that one. Hugh Hopkins then wrote about Kawhi Leonard bringing balance to the shoe game and the shoe force between sort of the sneaker wars that go on between Nike and New Balance and Adidas and Puma and all the other shoe names that are out there. And I wrote about the Lakers trade for Anthony Davis, which we'll obviously touch on when we get onto it later. But first, the NBA Finals. I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, it's quite difficult not to know that the Toronto Raptors are now the NBA champions. They are the world champions, as the Americans like to say, which I find a bit odd.
Well, they're the champions of at least two countries.
Yeah, so if you add them up, they beat out the rest of the world combined.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but no, it was Game 6 was an incredible game. It came right down to the wire with under 10 seconds left to play. There was a Raptors turnover. It looked like the Warriors were going to have their chance to win it. Steph Curry had his shot at glory. They drew up a brilliant play, which I read was something that Brad Stevens has been working on for a while and that Steve Kerr obviously used. Curry gets a screen, flies open around the arc and takes his three, and it doesn't go in, and that was it. It wasn't to be for the Golden State Warriors, and there was no Game 7 in Toronto. But the Raptors, you have to give them all credit. They're, as one of the signs that the parade has said earlier on, there's no asterisks here. Like I know there were a lot of injuries to the Golden State Warriors, and there were a lot of injuries to the Raptors. Like it's just one of those things that happens when you're playing, a regular season, and then you're playing in the postseason. But all credit to the Raptors. Mike, what were your initial thoughts after watching Game 6 the other morning?
Tight sphincter for a lot of that second half. I was in love with the way Clay was playing. I was absolutely devastated he went down. I thought I was getting my Willis Reed moment when he turned around and ran back out. That was
amazing.
Yeah, and then you mentioned it already, that shot at the end for Curry was a hell of a ballsy play, because that was a dangerous floating pass that looked like it might have got intercepted. But there was an interesting stat just before that coming up, which was it's now of 8, but it was of 7 at the time. How many go-ahead baskets do you think Steph has managed to score in playoff deciders? It was of 7, I believe, at the time, and now it's of 8.
4.
0.
Oh.
I was just like, you're kidding me. But, keep shooting.
That'll be why they keep bashing him on First Take and all those other American talk shows about him not being a good clutch performer.
Oh, we'll get into that in a minute, I'm sure. But yeah, I thought it was a great game. I said on the last one, and you've mentioned injuries. I think it had been quite a different series with a decent amount of health for the Warriors.
Obviously.
But those last two games were great, and you can't take anything away from the Raptors. They played exactly who was on the floor, and that's who they had to beat.
Joe, did you enjoy the series? Because you weren't on the last show, so we haven't had your thoughts during this finals.
Yeah, it was a weird series because I had to kind of explain to people I know who are just getting into basketball that even though the Warriors have the best shooting backcourt of all time, they still didn't have enough shooting. So, Iggy was 8 for 26 in the finals. Draymond was 5 for 19. They had nothing. And when you combine that with the size the Raptors have, something that, I'd like to get into in a minute, but I think the NBA, sorry, I don't think this. The NBA is a copycat league. So people tried to copy. I've just done like the air quotes because you can't copy the Warriors offense if you don't have their shooting. But teams tried to sort of copy the heavy switching philosophy. I'm wondering if now, with the size the Raptors won with, Siakam and Ibaka particularly as a duo killed the Warriors, I'm wondering if we're going to see a shift in team building and teams are going to look for that mismatch creating for like Pascal Siakam. And you're also seeing that in Philadelphia. So it was an interesting series that I think will change the landscape of the NBA.
Yeah, and it's just been a trend in the NBA the last 5 years, really, the evolution of the 4 and the 5 in this league to guys who can, spread the floor. And Brook Lopez is probably, the best example of that. He was never taking any threes, and then all of a sudden he just emerged as this fantastic guy who could, get you a clutch three when you needed it. And
except in the playoffs.
Yeah. But he's one of those guys who's still going to be, if you can add him to your team this summer, because he will be a free agent, he's going to be a big guy to go out and get it with the way the league is at the moment. But yeah, and we said it last week, the strength in numbers for the Raptors, like having all of those guys. I mean, they ran with pretty much a 7-man rotation for the finals. I mean, Nick Nurse didn't really want to go into the likes of Jody Meeks and Patrick McCaw and Jeremy Lin, which is, understandable. And the 7-man rotation he used was used to perfection. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think all 7 guys in these 6 games, at least one of them had a big shot. Like there's memorable moments throughout this entire series, from Pascal Siakam's opening game 1 where he just exploded and it looked like Golden State couldn't do anything about it. Kyle Lowry went on an absolute tear at the start of game 6. Fred VanVleet has had multiple big moments in this series. They really, delved into the fact that they are a really deep team. Like they went out and grabbed Marc Gasol before the deadline, and then they added Jeremy Lin and some other guys like that just to sort of push them through the regular season. And they were doing all of this while they were, running load management for Kawhi Leonard. And in the playoffs, when he was averaging sort of 40 minutes a game, it really paid off for them. And, Kawhi didn't have a great game 6 in that deciding game, but it didn't matter at the end of the day because Pascal Siakam, like Joe said, stepped up. Fred VanVleet stepped up. Serge Ibaka stepped up. And it was just an all-round team effort. And it was really great basketball to watch. You had a defensive juggernaut going up against this team that's got 2 of the greatest shooters in the history of the game. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was fun to watch. It would have obviously been a completely different series had Durant played, but I still don't think like the depth is the issue for the Warriors at the moment. And they just didn't have anybody besides sort of Quinn Cook coming off the bench for them who could give them anything.
Yeah, I'd be really surprised if Jerebko and McKinney found another NBA team. I think they were both pretty embarrassing. They just couldn't hit anything. And I know it's hard that, especially when you're alongside a high usage backcourt, that when you get the ball open, you are expected to just hit it. Otherwise, that is a failed possession for you in the eyes of fans. But they were both very awful at both ends. So it wouldn't surprise me if those two really struggle to find the next contract. And sort of the other guys they've always drafted, they have always gone for physically switchable guys. So like Jacob Evans, a guy I did a lot of scouting on last year, his jump shot's a little bit broken. So they've basically drafted guys who just don't quite look ready. Kevon Looney got a lot of hate. I kind of defend him a little bit. I think he's a switchable big, one of the better perimeter defending bigs out there. But they just, guys like Jordan Bell as well, they're not ready enough for the finals to play big minutes, especially when you're shorthanded.
No, I don't think you can knock Kevin Looney either. Like, he showed real heart and hustle to even be out there for some of those games, and going up against Marc Gasol, who is a veteran. Without Marc Gasol, the Raptors probably don't get past the Sixers because he completely shuts down Joel Embiid, which is something that we mentioned when they traded for him. That was one of the reasons they went out and grabbed him, was because they looked at the way he played against the likes of Embiid, and he was a lockdown defender in that situation, and he proved it again during those semi-finals. But yeah, I think the league's in a really interesting spot now, because you had Kawhi Leonard, who his greatness, like as brilliant as it is, it's very uniquely his. Like, he's not the most naturally gifted athlete on earth. Like, he doesn't jump off the page like LeBron does, and he's not really, Durant's sort of a mold breaking type unicorn player, but Kawhi is different. Kawhi has just worked his way to where he is now, and it speaks volumes that he cannot have a great game 6, but still impacts the rest of his team. And the whole philosophy of the Raptors this playoffs just seemed to be, if we lose a game, we lose a game. We just move on to the next one. And it was really interesting to see after, I think it was game 4 when they won on the road in the Oracle, there was like no celebrations or anything to go up 3-1. They were just all business. And yeah, in the end, it was all business as they won the championship. So I think you have to give them all the credit.
Yeah, there's no dispute in the fact that the Raptors played well. Finally, everyone was contributing. I think we're probably giving Gasol too much credit in the semi-finals. Embiid had gastroenteritis or whatever it was, and Kawhi dragged that team over the line when Gasol didn't want to contribute on the other end. I can get on board with going back to Joe's point with Jerebko struggling to find another contract. I think it's a bit harsh on McKinney, who is a second-year player, has been asked to do a lot and isn't the polished pro that others are. I just, it's kind of hard to lose, and I sound like a real sort of Warriors defender or whatever, but it's hard to lose 2 all-NBA players and then expect those voids to be filled by, role players of whatever capacity, when at this stage in the playoffs you're only going 7 or 8 deep. Like, for me, again, like, fair play to the Raptors for winning it. You can't take that away from them. But like, to start sort of pushing the blame onto the role players, I don't think that's necessarily fair for the Warriors. They stepped up as best they could, and they just had awful luck with injuries. But like I say, like I still think it would have been an interesting series either way, and the last 2 games, irrespective of who was on the floor, were fantastic to watch.
I don't think it would have been that much of a, everyone's got this assumption that if Durant had played and had been fully healthy, that it would have been a complete walkover. I think the regular season matchup, the regular season matchups between the 2 teams showed that it was never going to be that. The Raptors went out and built this team that is defensively focused. It's full of length. Like Joe said, it is probably the way the league's going. It can shoot the 3. It's been built to beat a team like the Warriors, and with or without Durant, it's gone and done that. And I think a lot of people are taking far too much credit away from the Raptors. Like, they went out there and did their job. I mean, Kyle Lowry, that man has erased every single doubt that has ever been laid upon his shoulders. Like, was just phenomenal. 26 and 10 in that clincher, and I think he hit 3 or 4 threes in a row in that first quarter.
Mm-hmm. He had a really hot start. Second half quieter, but that first half was just unbelievable.
I think Durant would have neutralised that size, though. I mean, that was kind of what killed the Warriors. Siakam was nullified completely in the second round by the 76ers. I'm comfortable saying that. He still hit some shots. He is a tough shot maker, especially from those sort of those low post baseline areas. But Durant, that's kind of what would have neutralised it. Iguodala's always been a good defender, but Siakam is, I think he's the most unique big in the league right now. I'm quite comfortable saying that, because I just don't think there's a guy with that defensive range. He legitimately can defend 1-3-5, but when he can just shred your small ball 4, it opens everything else up for the likes of Danny Green, Kyle Lowry, to become perimeter players. And that floor spacing was what always killed them with DeMar DeRozan. He was just an awful playoff player. Yeah. They did not have this problem this year, and that's kind of where Siakam, I think, developed a little bit more, because you had to respect Danny Green this year. You had to respect Fred VanVleet. you even had to kind of respect Norman Powell. He had some really surprisingly good games, player that I think Raptors fans have been critical of. When you get Siakam one-on-one, it's just there's a handful of players, but I'm talking 4 or 5 players, your Anthony Davises, your Joel Embiids. They're the only guys that can kind of go to town with him. So that for me was the big difference this year.
And the only reason they can go to town with him is because they are so much bigger than him physically. Like there's no one of his same sort of stature who can keep up with him. He's a phenomenal talent.
And that's the thing with like the Raptors going big, is if you are putting your centre on him, you are then leaving your power forward on Marc Gasol or Serge Ibaka. I mean, Gasol, I know people think post-ups are not what they used to be. I think what post-ups are now is to attack mismatches, especially on switches. If you've got, even guys like Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, they struggle with Gasol in the post. So if you get him against a power forward, you haven't really got much of a chance. I think that's where the Sixers did really, really well. And that's kind of moving forward. That for me is the battle of this Eastern Conference, providing that Kawhi Leonard stays in town. Yeah,
I think those two are lined up for dominance in the conference, but it is all dependent on whether Kawhi stays or not. Switching to the Warriors, you do have to give them a lot of credit for the way they played this series. They congratulated the Raptors today. I think they took out a full spread advert in one of the Toronto papers, which was a really class act to do. It was obviously the last game in the Oracle Arena, which was a bit of a shame to lose it like that, but to fight the way they did and to have Klay Thompson go out and then come back and hit those 2 free throws. I've never heard an NBA arena that loud. Even on my headphones, like it was just, imagine what it would have been like being there. I imagine it was deafening.
Yeah, I think it was the Ringer podcast was saying how sat there in the media row that one of them severely regretted not bringing their earplugs that they always usually takes. The Oracle's always been loud, and that moment, I honestly thought if he was able to stay on the floor, even if he wasn't able to contribute in the same capacity, he would have, that he had been doing, then that could have swung the game emotionally. I think the minute that, if you watch Curry's reaction, there was the slamming of the ball, there was the sat on the floor, and it was just an air of dejection. And then the fact that Klay was gone meant that the entire defense was able to focus in on Curry, and the rest of the team were unable to, as Joe mentions, spread the floor. I think the Raptors did a great job of neutralizing Curry when he was the sole shooter on the floor.
I think they did a pretty good job of neutralizing him for most of the series. Nearly every game we saw Nick Nurse bring out the box and one, which everyone was saying you shouldn't be doing that. That's not a professional level type of play to be using against in the NBA, but
it works.
It works. So they did it anyway, and they were triple teaming him and double teaming him the second he got across the half court. Like they were in his face. They made Game 6 a war zone the other night. But just back to Klay really quickly. He was phenomenal. I don't think there's for neutral NBA fans, I think a lot of people really appreciate what Klay Thompson is and what he has represented to the league the last 5 years. He is an absolute stud. He deserves a max contract. Even if he has with the ACL tear, it doesn't matter to me. I think he wants to be a Warrior for life, and he proved that the other night coming out there. That was his big moment. But he finished the game with 30 points, off 4 of 6 from the field, and some of those threes he hit were just massive. And you felt the whole shift of the dynamic of the game when he made those shots. And I think the Raptors were up by 9 at one stage in this game, and then it came back and Golden State went up by 5, I think. And there seemed to be a hell of a lot of lead changes and quite a few ties. It was a really nip and tuck game, and you thought right up until the final minutes, you just thought that Golden State were going to hang in there. But because they lacked that second shooter to sort of back up Steph Curry at the end there, they kind of fell out of options. But, you wouldn't have been surprised if you'd have seen Steph Curry make that shot at the end either. So I think it speaks to the greatness of that team. And everyone's going on about how the Warriors are now done. They will break up. We might not see that. Draymond said after the game that he thought that they would be back and that we'd see some iteration. Even if it's just those original 3 without KD, but the whole KD thing's difficult because Bob Myers got very emotionally upset, and I think there's a lot of blame being laid around the organization at the moment for how they handled that. But to have the series of events they had happen, you just can't you can't count on it. I mean, DeMarcus Cousins goes and tears his quad, and he's out for significant time. Iguodala had a calf injury, I seem to remember.
Yep. Straight after
Kevin Looney
KD
went
covering
out,
for
and he was told he wouldn't come back in, and then he came back in, and then you had Durant going down after he was told he could play and possibly couldn't get any worse, but he got a lot worse. And then Clay goes down. It was just that moment where Steph hit the floor. You saw the emotions of an entire organization go with it. It was quite difficult to watch, actually, but we've had such a great run with this team. They have given us some of the best basketball to watch over the last few years, and I know we've been really critical of them on this podcast before as well. Like, they've killed the league. It isn't fair. It's unbalanced. But at the end of the day, the basketball and the level they were playing at, if you're a pure enthusiast, was exceptional.
It was good to watch as well. It's not like they were just banging it in the post like some of the late 90s and mid 2000 teams, especially with when Harrison Barnes was there as well. Because I mean, Durant, he's like one of the great scorers. He's an isolation scorer at his best. So that kind of, I mean, it was still good to watch, but before that sort of when Steve Kerr and Alvin Gentry took over, that's the best, most attractive team I've watched by a mile. And I think one of the things that is kind of held against this team, I think Draymond Green is the guy who kind of makes them hated. But every great team ever has had that one player. This is true in all sports. Have that one player who just winds everyone up, gets under everyone's skin. But I mean, I don't think they're done. I think when Clay comes back, I still believe that if you can just get any kind of shooter at that 3 or 4 position, even if it's a 38, 39% guy, I think they're still a contender with this backcourt, providing that Clay obviously can still move and is still mobile.
Yeah, I agree. KD made the offense stagnate, but they were still better. But Joe's bang on the money. When they were pace and space and read and react, they were just phenomenal. And we kind of saw that briefly when KD went down in the first place. People, we got back to the fun Warriors. I've got no reason to believe they can't do that going forwards. They've still got that core that won a title in that, and they are a big three in Draymond, Clay, and Steph. Why are we suddenly writing them off? Like, they will be a playoff team next year, irrespective of where KD is. And people have come back from ACLs and been contributors. Clay has got one of the purest forms I've ever seen. One of the greatest shooters ever. He had. Do you remember at the start of the year when we were talking about how his slump and how not a good time to be shooting like this for in a contract year, and he was still in that slump just after Christmas. Well, he finished the year in the 87th percentile for 3-point field goal percentage, which is just absolutely nuts given his start to the season. And then he carried on in the playoffs and we went up to the 90th percentile across the whole league. He's one of the top 10 shooters, full stop. And it's just like, he's probably even better than that. It's just nuts. The guy is phenomenal. Max him.
And I think people are overreacting. I mean, I brought up Iggy and Draymond's shooting percentages earlier. Iggy, I believe, was 31% from 3. Draymond was 25%. I mean, those are just absolutely dreadful numbers. This team has always been built on, they create so much gravity at the top with all their ball screens. They don't drive. I think they have driven into the paint less than any other team. So if you can just get some good off-ball shooters for this team, theoretically, this series, it's not like the Warriors got trounced, even with all the injuries they've had. The game 6 came down to the wire, even with, let's be honest, some pretty bad players out on the court. I mean, Quinn Cook's not great. You've got Jerebko and McKinney as well. These are not great players. They're better with Durant, but they don't need him. That's kind of my take on this. It's not a very unique one, but you just get a shooter on that wing, and that. I wouldn't rule out Seth Curry at this point, providing that 3-guard lineup. They'd have to change their defensive scheme. I think that's what's going to change about Durant. I think the switching will go down a little bit, but this is still a team set up to contend. I'm certainly keeping all my Warriors stock at this point.
Yeah, I think they'll be back, and I think if Durant leaves, which it looks likely that he is, even though they've said they'll offer him a max, I still think his heart seems to be set with New York, even if it means he misses a year. That would give the Knicks a chance to work out what they were doing as well, because it's probably going to take them a year's worth of planning to work out how to build a team around him.
A lot of money left on the table if he because if they offer him a supermax in Golden State, that's what 220. Is it 220? I'm not quite sure if I'm remembering that right. It might be 200. But if he goes anywhere else, it's 140. Obviously, you get an extra year on the Supermax, 5 years in Golden State. You can sign for 4 years anywhere else. So that'll be a wedge of money. But we've seen guys walk away from those before. So maybe it's not as motivator.
And injuries like this are the big talking point when it comes to the Supermaxes and things like that, because players want us people as neutrals, as people who are never going to earn that much money in a lifetime, sit there and think, well, you just go and you take the money, and because you never know when you're going to get injured is the mindset behind that. But then you also think of, like, you go to New York, you get the marketing opportunities and everything else that goes with it, and being in New York and having the legacy of potentially turning that team around. There's so many questions we can answer, and we've got another 2 months to go on about all this, which is the fun part of free agency. But I think if he leaves, and I think the Warriors can go out and they could really do with a stretch 4. I think that would make a massive difference to this team, because even then, if you were too busy focused on Steph and Clay, there's going to be more people outside who can make that shot. And I think we'll see the Warriors team, but we'll see them go out and get depth. I think there's one argument that's coming out of this finals is that have the Raptors shown that you actually can't just have a super team anymore? Like, it's all fine when it works, but if you have that injury, or those 2 injuries in this case, it blows everything out of the water. So you've got, one mentality is you build a team and you have a star or 2 stars and you build around them, or the other is you do what the Lakers seem to be trying to do and go for the 3 stars or the 4 stars and fill the bench with, veteran minimum players. But
see, I don't buy that idea that maybe you should not go for the stars, because if there's always a risk of injury, and if you flipped it the other way around, if the Raptors lost their first and third best player, let's say, so that's Kawhi, and who do you want to put at the third? Do you want to put?
I'm putting Lowry, I think.
Okay, so second would be Siakam.
Yeah.
So so if you take Lowry and Leonard off that team, how many games are they winning against the fully healthy Warriors? None. Like, exactly. To me, screw the depth, because you only go 7 deep anyway.
I think you need
the stars.
Those 3 players for the Raptors, I know they haven't got the reputation. I mean, Lowry's tarred by those bad playoff performances in the past, and Siakam's new. They are 3 for me. At least 2 star players. Like, when we do I imagine we'll do our top 50s again for the site. Siakam is going to be well in my top 30, maybe knocking on the door of top 25. Like, these are like very, very, very good players.
Yeah.
Siakam's ceiling is ridiculous, and I generally didn't think we'd be talking about that on this podcast, but I think he's only been playing basketball since 2011.
Yeah, he played football, and I believe, like Sekou Doumbouya from the NBA draft, I believe he was too big. Because, I mean, there's not...
He's another Lukumbar Mote protege, isn't he?
Yeah, I
he's
think
definitely
he
came up through the NBA
camp,
Africa camps, and same as Joel Embiid, and it's just... There's so much talent there, which is no wonder the NBA is expanding its programming over there to have academies and leagues, because there's a lot of guys who, coming up playing football have learned a particular footwork skill set that translates beautifully to basketball. And go back to Hakeem Olajuwon, and he was a goalie, and so they don't even need I'd say that I don't know anything about football. Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. I assume goalies don't need the world's best footwork.
No, they do now, actually. But I mean, at the time he was keeping, no, they didn't.
So there's. I just think we're going to see some more guys come through the same way. This rise from absolutely nowhere really quickly.
We've got a Guinean coming in this year as well in Sekou Doumbouya. Like, that's going to be big as well, I think. Yeah, like Guinea, they've not put themselves on the map, and I mean, I've done my research on. They've not put themselves on the map with many sports stars at all. So I mean, that could be massive.
This is going to show my ignorance, and I realise we're getting off topic now, but is that Papua New Guinea, or is that an actual place called Guinea? Or?
No, there's a place called Guinea, and it's in Western Africa. It's bordered by like the Ivory Coast and Mali and places like that.
Randomly, I wonder if that's where guinea pigs come from. But that's a story for another time.
Oh, Mike, what on earth?
Hey, you like a good tangent.
We do, but well, there's such a good point to go on. I mean, what does this mean for the NBA? And it's massive for Canadian basketball. I've never seen Canadian basketball fans so positive on Twitter and everything the last few weeks. The amount of articles coming out from the likes of Bruce Arthur and some of the Toronto Star people, like it's just they've been completely basketball mad for the last it seems like 6 weeks. And the Raptors were a very global team. I mean, you look at OG's there, obviously, born and raised in London, England, didn't play at all in the finals, which is a real shame. I don't think we can
claim he was raised here. He left when he was 2.
We're claiming it, mate.
We're claiming it. We'll take that.
We claim anything.
We left
British
a grown
basketball
2-year-old
claims
man.
any link to the NBA. It doesn't matter how obscure it is. We claim it. Pascal Siakam's from Cameroon, obviously. You got Serge from Congo and
Marc Gasol, Spain.
Marc Gasol from Spain. Like it was a really international roster, and it's nothing new. Like when the Spurs were winning championships, they were kind of known as like the Foreign Legion because they had Italians and Spaniards and Australians, and they had a mix of players as well. But it is nice to see a team from outside of the States, take home the trophy, and especially Canada, considering the sport was invented there.
And I think that's the difference. Like the difference between the Spurs is that this is not only a foreign team. It sounds weird because
it is the only team in a different country.
Yeah, so it is a foreign team. And then it has all this international ties. And then you look at the structure of the organisation, and you've got assistant coach Phil Handy, Nick Nurse, and Masai Ujiri, who have all spent time in the UK as well, involved with the BBL. And it's just like, I know that we like to cling on to things, but there is a sort of, even the city itself is very multicultural and metropolitan, and just a great, vibrant place. It's great to see that translate into the team. It's almost like the team is an embodiment of the city, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you're forgetting Alex McKechnie as well, like from Glasgow. The roots run deep in this team. It's really, drawing attention to somebody like one of the director of sports science and one of the head physios who's been so pivotal in keeping Kawhi healthy all year. And you saw that if you go back and watch the parade on YouTube, he's the back half of the bus. He is hanging with Kawhi Leonard and his girlfriend and his kids, and clearly they've got some sort of rapport from this past year, and Kawhi obviously respects him, which is fantastic to see somebody like that having such a big impact on an organization over there. And I believe their couple of the guys on their social media team, and the Raptors social media team is in a league of their own. They're incredible. Mm-hmm. A couple of those guys I think are from Liverpool, so
wow.
They are making we're making a little dent, even if it's not on the
we're claiming the whole team, the whole franchise.
We have to claim everything, Mike.
How if we talk about the franchise, we're quite quick to anoint sort of not dynasties necessarily, but the coming of a team that's going to be there for a while. Do you feel that this Raptors team is actually built to last, or do you feel that this is a one and done?
My worry is Lowry. I mean, I don't want to dampen this, but you've got to remember that there are reports that they tried to trade him at the trade deadline for Mike Conley. Yeah. And I'm sure they're very glad they didn't, because Lowry was excellent in the playoffs. But I'm wondering if Masai maybe tried to get ahead of that decline, if that makes sense. I don't think they'd be able to move him. But then again, Timothy Mozgov got moved twice in the space of a couple of months. So I guess anything can happen in the NBA. But that's what worries me. I think you've got Kawhi and Siakam. That's two mismatch one-on-one scorers who are going to open up space, create double teams, and if you've got shooters around them, you're going to be a contender. But Lowry's the guy who runs the set. He's the off-ball guy. He is the one who runs the pick and roll. I think that is potentially the thing to watch when you're projecting this team moving forward.
It's an interesting point to discuss, because the Raptors look like they went out and got a bunch of players who are sort of towards the end of their careers. I mean, Marc Gasol's been in the league 10, 11 years? It's been a while now. Lowry as well, Serge Ibaka, Danny Green, even Kawhi is in his 8th or 9th year, I seem to think. But they've got some question marks, and if Kawhi does leave, then it opens the door to, do they blow it up? And Masai Ujiri's not been a stranger to just blowing things up before. But I think if Kawhi stays, then they've got a core there to at least challenge for another year or so. And one of the rumours is that Kawhi might just, do another year and then see where the landscape of the league lies. Because yet again, Kawhi Leonard's come in and blown apart another super team and destroyed another dynasty and opened up competitive balance in the league once again. So
don't forget though, and I admire the Washington Wizards for shooting their shot, but the Wizards are supposedly going for Masai Ujiri and are looking to offer him it's a
millions.
It's a lot. It's like 12,
it's 10
15.
mil a year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's 10. I think it can rise to 12 or 15 with performance bonuses. I mean, yeah, you've got to admire the gutsiness from the Washington Wizards. I can't imagine
they need to do something.
I can't imagine
the timing of it as well.
Yeah,
Woj dropped that as they were on the whatever you call it, the platform accepting the Larry O'Brien trophy.
the Wizards as well. I mean, they don't have a GM and they've not brought anyone in for workouts. I think they're all in on this very small time idea of going and getting Masai Ujiri, who's just won a championship.
It's mad.
And I guess it makes sense because if Kawhi goes and the team then is what it is, Masai might think, well, here's my next great prospect. I'll go and take the money and try and resurrect the Bullets.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's all going to hinge on that, whether he opts in. Well, he's not going to opt in, really, is he? Because he's going to be leaving 15 mil on the table if he does that. And if and everything's around him, he has been the linchpin of this team. Because then Gasol's got a player option as well. Danny Green's an unrestricted free agent. Patrick McCaw and Jeremy Lin for what they were worth.
He three-peated, man.
He did three-peat. I love that. But he didn't really contribute much to it. It's going to be an incredible summer for them. Do you think Kawhi stays?
No, I don't. I think he's going to go to the Clippers, but it's definitely one to eye. He just strikes me as the kind of guy who doesn't really get influenced by anyone else. He doesn't care what anyone thinks. It just, from what I've been reading and what I've been hearing, he's kind of had his heart set on LA for a while.
Yeah, even in his responses to, I think it was Doris Burke was sort of trying to pin him down on it, and then he was his ever stoic self.
They've all tried it. Rachel Nichols has tried it. Like everybody from NBA TV, I swear everyone who's interviewed Kawhi the last 3 weeks has tried to get some form of answer out of him and hasn't got very far.
I mean, you kind of have to look at him and go, all the powers with him, obviously, but if he's carried this team to an impressive level, no one at the start of the playoffs picked these guys to win the title. He elevated them to a level they've never been to in their 24-year history. He's won MVP, Finals MVP with another team as well. He knows what it takes to win, and he is capable of dragging a team significantly further than their actual ceiling without him, which very, very few players are actually able to do. So for me, if he goes, fair play to him, because wherever he's going, he knows he can lift that team higher. And if it's something like the Clippers, then they're in for a fun ride, because if they can retain some of their free agents this summer who were so impressive last year, like Patrick Beverley, that is going to be a nasty team to get on the court against.
Yeah, and they've got their own mismatch maker in Montrezl Harrell as well. Doesn't have the defensive versatility of Pascal Siakam, but I think they've built a roster. You've got guys like Landry Shamet as well. He's got 4 more years on his rookie deal, and he's already one of the best shooters in the league. They are set up to have that roster around the star, whereas a team like the Lakers are not.
No, they're certainly not. But I think Toronto are in a good spot, even if he does leave. I think there's some really talented young guys on that roster. I mean, we mentioned OG showed sparks of it this year, spent a lot of his time playing at the 4 instead of the 3, because obviously Leonard was there, but he's proven he can play both over the last 2 years of his career. Pascal, obviously Joe's praised him to the ceiling and back tonight. Norman Powell's shown that he can actually be productive when they need him to. So I think there is, the future's bright, even if Kawhi does leave. And with the way the Eastern Conference is right now, and how messed up the Celtics are and some of the other franchises, like, who knows what's going to happen. Is there anything you guys want to mention quickly before we move off the finals and take a quick break and then go on to the Anthony Davis trade?
Just quickly, I'm glad you mentioned OG, because if Kawhi does go, he's the perfect player to fill that role. And I'm not saying he's anywhere near the talent level of Kawhi, but the comps as he was coming into the league and who he compared himself to and who he aspired to be was Kawhi. And he's got the stoic personality down. He's got the defense and the hustle and the heart. And his coming into the league, his offensive game, as unpolished as it was still significantly more polished than Kawhi's. So this is,
we're not just saying he's got a stoic personality for the sake of it either. Mike has spoken to him and it was stoic.
He was stoic. Stoic beyond belief. But I imagine he's the kind of guy who's silently seething right now that he wasn't able to contribute at all during this run. And I think that's going to be interesting to see what he can do next year, because this will probably be something that lights a fire under him.
Well, him, Siakam, and Van Fleet are all guys like that. Those three just seem to be there to prove people wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's the best mentality you can probably have as a professional athlete, is to just constantly want to prove people wrong. And Fred Van Vliet started the playoffs awfully, had his baby, and all of a sudden turned into a completely different player. But, he's had an incredible backstory. And if you go on TSN's website, there's like a real, I don't know how many words it is, probably 5,000 word length feature on his like backstory and his career path into the NBA, and it's really, really interesting to go and check that out. So I thoroughly recommend it. But anyway, we will just take a quick break, and we'll be back after that. So, folks, we're just taking a little quick break out from our podcast to tell you about NBAstore.eu, Europe's official NBA online store. They have everything you need to rep your favourite team or player this summer, and Double Clutch has partnered with them to bring you this amazing offer.
Our listeners get 15% off orders with code DCPOD15. Apply the code at checkout and grab yourself a bargain, including the new Raptors NBA Champions range, suitable for hardcore fans and bandwagoners alike.
Yeah, so that code again is DCPOD15. Whatever you need, from current Nike jerseys to hardwood throwback classics to socks, the store has you covered. Like the champagne covered the visitors' locker room at the Oracle, but the offer does not include clearance and outlet items, so keep that in mind.
Yep, so once again, get your gear. Why not snap a picture and send it to us at Double Clutch UK? What are you waiting for? Head on over to NBAstore.eu now and use code DCPOD15 for 15% off your order. Now back to the show. So the Los Angeles Lakers decided to upset the apple cart right before the Raptors Championship parade today. We are recording this at 9:30 on the Monday the 17th. So the Lakers couldn't wait a couple of days for the Raptors to have their final shining moments of glory this postseason. They decided to announce that they had traded for Anthony Davis. It's a difficult one to analyze right now because a lot of the details still don't seem to be out in the public, but basically the Lakers traded most of their future plus a lot of their players for Anthony Davis, which in some people's books makes loads of sense and in others doesn't make much sense at all. Joe Hulbert, what side of the fence are you sitting on with this one? Is it a good trade for the Lakers or is it a bad trade?
I think it's a good trade. I've been well documented that I'm quite low. I'm lowish on the Lakers core. I couldn't believe that Kyle Kuzma was the hold-up. I don't think he's really anything special. He's like he's a volume scorer. I mean, a friend of mine's a Lakers fan called him the 6'9" Jordan Clarkson. I kind of get on board with something like that. I'm just not a fan of him. So he's staying, but obviously I like Lonzo. I don't think Luke Walton did enough to hide his limitations. I mean, Walton did not run the best of offensive sets at all. But Brandon Ingram for me is the main get for the Pels. I think he's a secondary scorer. I think the problem the Lakers had is that they tried to make him a primary sort of isolation scorer from the corners. I think he's a guy you can get sort of drive and kick action off. I mean, the Pels got a big haul, but the Lakers got a top 10 player who, we were speaking about mismatch problems earlier. You saw what, sorry to bring this up, Mike, but you saw what Anthony Davis did to the Trailblazers last year, almost single-handedly. There are very few teams now who can match that LeBron AD size. And I think as well, you could put LeBron at the 4 and AD at the 5. But my problem isn't with the trade. My problem is that I don't trust, it's not Magic Johnson anymore, it's Rob Pelinka. I don't trust him to, even with that sort of 30 million-ish in cap space, I still don't trust him to surround these guys. They've only got 5 players on the roster. It's obviously those two, Kyle Kuzma, Isaac Bonga, and Mo Wagner. Mo Wagner's good, by the way. He's a nice fit alongside LeBron because he can play as that sort of stretch center for the bench, but they have no guards on the roster. And when you look at the ones he signed last summer, Rajon Rondo, Lance Stevenson, they traded a second-round pick for Reggie Bullock, who is a free agent, and they gave up that guy who's the Ukrainian guy whose name I will not even try and pronounce. I apologize for that. But they did not really sign and identify very good guards. So I do not trust the Lakers to make this work. But the trade itself in a vacuum is fine. I've got no problem with what they gave up.
Yeah, and I think the comparisons to the Boston Celtics Nets deal from a while ago are quite frankly unfair. That trade sent an aging Paul Pierce and an aging Kevin Garnett plus others to the Nets for a whole a chest load or a war chest, as is the phrase, of picks. And these two, they don't even compare. You've gone and got Anthony Davis, who's a 26-year-old superstar coming up to his prime. Yes, I know he's had injuries, but let's be honest, he's not going to be sitting out for a little finger issue anymore. Not with LeBron and his team anyway. Or he might, who knows. But at the moment, the situation for the Lakers is really up in the air. And I wrote on the website about what they can do with the cap space. And since I've wrote that, the cap space situation's fluctuated again. So it may be a case that it's moved, the bar's moved yet again by the time this pod comes out tomorrow. I mean, the ceiling for the cap at the moment is $32.5 million, which is around $200,000 short of what you would actually need to give someone a full max like Kyrie Irving or Kemba Walker, for example. Not that $200,000 is going to make that big a deal to some people, but Bobby Marks of ESPN, who's their cap guy, he used to work for he worked for the Nets for like 15 years. So he knows his stuff. He was reporting that it could also
same Nets that made that trade, by the way.
Yeah, it could also go down to 27.8 million. And then the Los Angeles Times today are reporting that it could go down even lower to 23 million. And it all depends on what Anthony Davis does with his £4 million trade kicker bonus. So it's up in the air, and right now the Lakers seem to be wanting to grab Kemba Walker, but to be honest, I think it's off the question. I think it always has been off the question. They are relying on far too much good faith from the Pelicans and from other franchises around the league to get the cap space that they need, because the Pelicans are obviously going to be looking to ship that number 4 pick, which the Lakers got by pure luck in the lottery. I think without that 4 pick, this deal probably doesn't go through. And now the Pelicans are going to try and ship it, which is understandable, but the team that's getting that pick is probably not going to want to help the Lakers out in terms of them getting another superstar. So
I like the trade. Just to ease Joe's worries, AD did play point guard in high school, so they're fine. They needed another superstar around LeBron, because that's what you need. You need multiple superstars to win in this league. We've just had that conversation. I saw someone taking shots at LeBron saying, well, is he actually that good if he needs another superstar? Yes, he is that good. He's just a 34-year-old that good. And, it's the West. AD, people think that he's being overpaid. Well, not overpaid, sorry. They've overpaid for him in terms of what they've sent. I don't think necessarily they are. I think maybe people are undervaluing Anthony Davis partly because of the market he's been in. I mean, he's consistently, yes, he's had injuries, but he's consistently had to carry the entire load of a franchise. And he's done it in one of the smallest markets in the league. So nobody knows him. We'll say nobody knows him. people don't know him as well as they should, even though he's probably been a top 5 player many, many, many times over the past sort of 6 seasons. He has been a fantastic talent. It's just he has been unfortunate with injuries, but he has carried an entire franchise. He's an unbelievable talent. Like, if you look at what LeBron has won with previously, it's been a big 3. They've needed a big man, and this is a big man, bigger and better than both of the big men. Too many bigs in this monologue.
You're tongue twisting.
Exactly. So you look at Kevin Love. Well, this is a guy who's taller than Kevin Love, can rebound better than Kevin Love, and people are going to shout at me for that one. Can handle the ball better than Kevin Love. Is more versatile. And it's the same. You can make the comparisons with Chris Bosh. He is a bigger, better version. If they land a guard, doesn't even need to be necessarily a point guard, but a guard who with an outside shot. This is a team that are going to be in contention, regardless of who you then throw around the rest of it. In terms of what the Pelicans got, great. They are set up. They now have no excuse for not becoming a relevant franchise within the next. What are we going to give them? Would you even give them 6 years?
I'd give them 3 or 4. I think.
Okay, I'm being uber generous then, because they've got 3 first round picks, including pick swaps. They've got 3 young players. Brandon Ingram, fingers crossed for forget basketball for a minute. But fingers crossed this blood clot issue resolves itself, and he become he's healthy and able to play. They've got a good young core that they can build around Zion Williamson, and they've got assets that they can continue to do that. And you need that. If you look at how the Warriors were built, oh God, we're talking about the Warriors again.
Stop it.
People complain about how good they are, but this is they only got in KD. Like the rest of it was like drafted and built upon. Iguodala obviously came in, but he wasn't necessarily a key component the way that Harrison Barnes, I can't believe I named him first, Green, Curry and Thompson were. This is their opportunity to get those assets.
Yeah, and they made Iggy change his role completely.
Oh, yeah,
he was a star in Philly, and he goes over to play for the Warriors and takes less money and plays a different role, and plays some of the best basketball of his career. But
short stop in Denver in between as well. But it's exactly it. He completely reinvented himself, and that's. He took the regular seasons off, which is why you got a Game 6 performance like you did from him the other day.
I think it's a really smart. Like David Griffin was obviously brought in to do this, to push this deal over the edge, because when it was back in February and the Lakers were making everything public, it kind of looked really embarrassing for both organizations, and there was a lot of public spatting, which is not great. And David Griffin's obviously got this done quite quickly. The Lakers and AD's agent, they've been really quite public with, he wasn't going to stay in Boston if Danny Ainge pulled the trigger on that deal. So the Lakers ended up being really the only option. The Lakers have sold out everything to get him, but the age he is, his PER this season was 30.3. He's a incredible player, and you mentioned the versatility that he brings, and that's massive, especially if they do end up going against someone like the Golden State Warriors, because you've got a 4 or 5 who can effectively chase out those shooters, which is massive in this league. You've got 2 of the top 5 players on the same team. It just now comes down to what they can put around him. I think Kyle Kuzma, I think they kept him because he was, out of all of the Lakers' young core, the only known player, if that makes sense. I mean, he sort of averaged 18 points a game for them last season, and you know what he brings. He is the one known factor, whereas Brandon Ingram, you didn't know what he was going to bring every night. Lonzo Ball was the same and had a lot of other off-court issues, which caused problems for the franchise. Josh Hart, I'm surprised they let him go in that deal, but at the end of the day, the Pelicans were just trying to get everything they could, and now with Zion coming in, they won't make the same mistakes they made with AD, because they kind of rushed out to put some talent around him, didn't they? And they didn't quite think any of it through. It was let's overpay Omar Ashik and bring in some other guys and see what happens. And
forgot about that Ashik contract.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
Jesus.
It never quite worked out for them, but now they've got a young core of players around them. They've got Lonzo and Drew Holiday in the backcourt, which defensively is fantastic. I'm not sure where they get the offense from there, but they'll work that out. And if they don't want to keep Lonzo, then the Bulls have shown a lot of interest in trading for him recently. So we've got another 2 months of this. There could be all kinds of moves by the time we actually get to the start of the new season. But I think it's a good deal for the Lakers. It's just a case of what they do with that cap space, and I am a big supporter of splitting the cap space. As great as it would be to pursue Kemba Walker, I don't think he'll leave Charlotte personally. I think they can offer him too much, and he's too invested in that franchise.
Well, there's Kyrie rumours now, because apparently he was desperate to play with AD.
Yeah, but he's been locked in to play for the Nets the last few weeks, because they were stating that if he was going to play for them, then they'd kick D'Angelo Russell out the door, which then opened up, well, does D'Angelo Russell go and play for the Knicks? Because the Knicks seem to be desperate at the moment. So,
how's that magical off-season looking for the Knicks, by the way? They were expecting to get, what was it, Zion? They thought they'd get in the draft. They then thought they'd get KD, who's now out for, at least a year. They thought they'd get AD, and there was one other as well, wasn't there? They were hoping to get.
They've been with Kemba a lot.
It's just, yeah. Part of me, it's sad that Knicks fans have become so desperate that before the playoffs start, they're praying for the off season. But I just love it at the same time that these hopes and this summer romance they were looking forward to has just been tarnished before we've even started free agency.
I'm going to sit on the other side of the fence. I think it sucks that the Knicks haven't got a good team in New York. Like, you're in the biggest market in the States. You're in New York. Like, they are the attraction every night. There's other teams in New York, but it doesn't seem to matter. The Knicks seem to take the news all the time. If they had a good team, then I think the league would be in a better situation.
So
the league seems they've tried.
No,
badly.
but they're trying to get. I'm talking like build it from the ground up, like the Pelicans are trying to do. Don't just try and scab off every free agent that's coming. Like, I get that there's always going to be that desire to pick up the superstar.
The Pelicans have only been able to do this because they had a top 5 player to get rid of to get the pick.
Like Kristaps Porzingis
back.
wasn't a top 5 player. Like when okay, no,
top
hang
5?
on, no. I've gone in the draft in my head. He was the 5th pick in the draft. No, I don't mean in the league.
He was a legitimate building block. Like, he's a 7 foot. He's a 7 foot rim protector who hits threes. Like, you just imagine now. Imagine Porzingis and Mitchell Robinson as a front court moving forward if they'd kind of kept hold of him. That's when we spoke earlier about punishing mismatches. You've got a historic shot blocker. I know it's only 1 year, but his rates for blocking were historic, like Manute Bol level. Just unbelievable. And then you've got Kristaps, 7 foot, who's got the mobility of a guy who's 6 foot. It's, not to bash on the Knicks because, this is about the Lakers and the Celtics, but the Knicks are
You never bash on the Knicks, Joe. What are you on about?
I've been accused of that so many times over the years.
I think the reason I enjoy it so much is because there is an obvious fundamental problem with that franchise, and yet there's just a blindness to it. And it's okay. Don't worry. We'll be bailed out because of our brand versus what we're actually doing on the court. And I just love the fact that it hasn't happened at this stage.
Yeah,
I've got to admit, though,
how the hell did we get on the Knicks?
Because I did it.
I'm looking at the free agent guards for this year, and I've got to be honest, I think, though I don't trust Rob Pelinka, he's going to have, even if it's $25 million, you've got guys I'm looking at now, you've got guys like Danny Green, Terrence Ross had a really good season for Orlando.
Malcolm Brogdon.
Malcolm Brogdon would be the dream. You've got guys like Garrett Temple, Goran Dragic, like, he's kind of been a forgotten man. I've caught a lot of him. I know he's 33, but you give him a 1-year deal. He's a good shooter, and I think what Davis's one weakness is ball handling and that sort of shot creation. So I think finding that secondary ball handler to go alongside LeBron is the key. I'd love to see them go after a guy like Dragic, even at his age. Kemba, I'm kind of with you, as a little bit of a pipe dream. Even if he doesn't stay, I think if he doesn't stay, he'll still want the maximum money he can get elsewhere. And if the Lakers offer that, where are the other players coming from? Because they haven't got any picks.
Well, they're coming from the veteran minimum, which is not going to get you too much.
No, it's not, because, you even look at the good veterans who are hitting the market. It's people like Patrick Beverley, Corey Joseph. These are proven-ish players. They're not going to settle for the veterans minimum. So, yeah, my worry last year was that the Lakers targeted names. They went for Rondo, They went for Lance Stevenson. I know it doesn't sound like these guys are marquee names.
Yeah.
McGee says a lot. McGee was probably their best free agent acquisition other than LeBron. He was relatively good. Like Michael Beasley as well. I've kind of been a defender of him over the years, but they targeted these names, and I really think it's a bit of a, maybe I'm making NBA GMing seem easier than it is, but you've got 2 top 10 players. You've got Mo Wagner, Kyle Kuzma. They're NBA level players for me, even though I'm critical of Kuzma. You've got 30 million, and you are selling these players on coming and playing with 2 Hall of Famers. This should be a relatively easy-ish off-season for the Lakers if that cap space is good. Like, you look at some of the guys that they can go after. It'll be mind-boggling to me if they fail to even get someone like Jeremy Lamb or Patrick Beverley through the door. There's a lot of good off-ball guards available.
Yeah, and this free agency class actually fits them perfectly. There is players available in every position, talented players in every position who are either coming towards the end of their careers or in a position where, you know, if they want to play alongside Anthony Davis, then that sets them up for the next, 10 years or so. Because AD being 26, he will be the future of the Lakers now. He will hopefully end up re-signing, and then they can carry on with him once LeBron is gone. But it's going to be an interesting one, and I am veering towards what Joe just said. I don't see how you could mess this up. Like, the smart decision, but the Lakers have proved the last 10 years that they don't tend to like making smart decisions, is to not pursue the third guy and just go out and grab some other really good role players to fill that slot. I mean, unless you can get Jimmy Butler on a cheaper contract, but I don't think he would take it. He liked one of the Instagram posts that when AD had been traded, so all the rumours immediately were, Jimmy Butler's going to LA, but the Sixers can still offer him a lot more money than everybody else, and the rest of the teams around the league are still a bit scared of what he does in the locker room to people.
That sounds way more ominous than it actually was. But it's going to be a heck of an off season. Absolutely, we could have an entire. It feels like one of those sort of landscape shifting years again, and it doesn't feel like it's been 2 years since we had one of those either. It's just, in fact, last year, wasn't it, when LeBron went west? That was landscape shifting. Amazing.
You don't get any time off.
Yeah, exactly.
From the Pelicans' point of view, though, this offseason, there's a lot of people who think this trade that this is their young core now moving forward, but I worry about the floor spacing. Zion is the best prospect in this draft. He's the best prospect since Anthony Davis, but I don't think early on he's going to be more than like a 32 to 35% 3-point shooter. If he's open, he's going to take it, but he's not a guy you're going to be running off screens, in my opinion. Ingram had a really good shooting year last year. I believe he shot 40%. Last year he went down by a lot. Drew Holiday is not a sharp shooter. He's a great player, 33%. Lonzo Ball, I don't need to talk about his shooting. They've got, again, Josh Hart, good rookie year, dropped again this year to about 31%. Even as good as Alvin Gentry is, and this team's going to be deadly in transition, but the difference is your half-court sets. You can't just run in transition. That's why the Thunder keep falling short under Billy Donovan in the postseason. Do you guys think this is the roster? Because I've got to be honest, looking at this, I think one of those 2 point guards, Drew or Ball, has to go. I don't think they can play together at all.
I don't think this is a final roster. I think they've got a long. You've given them a shorter window than I have. They've got time to figure this out, what they want to do, where they want to go with. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a complete sort of reset and Holiday's moved at some point. To be honest, they've got enough assets there that I don't see anyone other than Zion being a key foundation. They can just they've got the young core, great, but they can flip them if they need to. They've got the picks coming in, great. They can move them off for bigger stars if they decide that they need to speed things up. They've got an abundance of options available to them now.
I really believe in Lonzo Ball, though. Like, as annoying as his dad is, Luke Walton just. My problem with I feels like I'm really going at Luke Walton, but my problem is he inherited that really good Warriors team, and he tried to run the same offense in LA, and he just did not adapt to his personality. I think Alvin Gentry is going to be really good for Ball. I still believe Ball has that maybe not all-star, because I don't think he's going to put up the box score stats that get you to be an all-star, but I think he can have an all-star level impact in terms of advanced metrics, certainly defensively. I really, really believe in him as a piece alongside Zion, but obviously you've got to navigate that shooting, which is why I think the three, that's what they need to do. They need to add shooting, because I think early on, Zion, if I had to compare his game to a player who's in the NBA right now, it's actually Julius Randle, and that's a compliment. That's not me bashing him, but he's going to be a guy who he's entering the NBA as the second heaviest player behind Boban. He's just going to bully people moving inside. Like That's nuts. He's going to be an absolute freight train moving inside. That's what he's going to be good at. He's going to be instant offense in transition. You're going to have to double him up straight away. But the key for the Pelicans is obviously going to be maneuvering, and that's kind of where I like them trading down. This is, in the 4 years I've been studying the draft, this is the weakest class by far. So the number 2 prospect on my board is Jarrett Culver. He would have probably been 11 or 12 last year, to illustrate how not great this draft is. So I think moving down, just selecting some off-ball guys, some project guys in that late lottery range is a very good idea. And there are teams who want to move up. I believe the Bulls, the Wizards, and the Timberwolves are all looking to move up. Don't know why, but there we go.
Yeah, and the draft takes place this Thursday, I believe.
Thursday 20th.
Yeah, Thursday night. I mean, Joe, you've got another draft podcast coming out before then, so hopefully we can get some more bits of tidbits from you.
Yeah, draft study is really hard, but it's really rewarding, because you're looking at something that not everyone else is watching, so people come to you for the information, which is just really cool. And I think that's a big void here in the UK. I mean, I know from speaking to a couple of people, Sky, I believe, I don't think they're showing the draft. I think that will change eventually. I think it's early days. I know the NFL on Sky didn't show the draft straight away, but that's a big void in the UK coverage, and I'm trying to fill that as much as I can.
Yeah, not to put it down on anything, but there's breaking news that there's been a shooting at this Raptors parade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
really?
Yeah, it's a bit of a bummer. So we hope
at least 2 people suffered serious injuries.
Yeah, we hope that our Canadian listeners, and we know you exist because we see you on our downloads map, are all okay, and that you actually have enjoyed the parade this afternoon. But anyway, moving on, we could talk about the future of the Lakers and the Pelicans for another 2 podcasts or 3 podcasts, but we've got plenty of time to do that. Mike, the results of our episode 300 Super Blowout Palooza competition. I think it's about time we made the announcement, seeing as the finals are over. That will be the final thing we do on the show, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So it finished the minute the finals ended, and then we randomly drew it. But thank you to everyone who listened to episode 300 and entered the competition. Thank you again to 2K UK and Fanatics for the prizes. I feel like we need some suspense music here. Maybe we should play the Raptors Kawhi Leonard Jurassic Park laugh again. So the runners-up, who will each receive a copy of 2K19 Legend Edition for their respective platforms and £50 NBA Store.eu vouchers, are Laura Burton and Phil. I don't know his surname, but he's got a handle. I can find him. I
thought there was an error in our document.
No. And the winners, who will each receive a copy of 2K19 Legend Edition and NBA Playgrounds 2 for their respective platforms, and £100 to the NBA Store.eu vouchers, are... Simon Cowell's really good at this stuff, isn't he? Where he does that delay. But I don't care about him. But I'm making it work because now you're delayed and the suspense is rising. Craig Rickwood and Carly Lightfoot. So please email us, admin@doubleclutch.uk, confirming your postal address for the games and your email address for the vouchers. Congratulations. I hope you enjoy the prizes. Send us a pic, tweet, tag us, all that stuff when you get them through. But I look forward to receiving your emails.
Yeah, well done, guys. Was Laura the one who tweeted about us buying all the socks? I think that's a good idea. I think you should spend all your money on the socks, Laura.
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing. Just a massive pile of Stan socks.
If you do buy £50 worth of Stan socks, please send us a photo.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Right. Has anybody got anything they want to plug or mention before we go? Obviously, Joe's podcast, keep an eye out for them this week, is obviously the one he did on the Bigs, which came out last week. So that's probably on your podcast app or whatever it is you listen to, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts. That's the new one. I keep saying iTunes. I'm going to have to stop, learn to remove that from my podcasting vocabulary, which has been a bit difficult when you've been doing it for 10 years. And it's always been, subscribe on iTunes, review on iTunes.
I haven't even noticed. I don't know what the difference is. I'm just pleading ignorance. I'm still in shock after you and Hugh broke it to me last week.
It's difficult, isn't it? Anyway, please do check out the website, doubleclutch.uk. If you have enjoyed the podcast, please do leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or any of the other platforms that you may be listening to. If you're listening to the show and you're streaming it or whatever it is you use to download, and there's a platform that we're not on, please do let us know, because we're always looking at expanding platforms. We're not on SoundCloud and things like that at the moment. We are looking into it, but if there's more, or if there's a preferred app that you would like to have our podcast on, then please do get in touch with us on Twitter or Facebook, or you can email us admin@doubleclutch.uk, and hopefully we can sort that out for you. But yeah, it's been a fun one, guys. Are you looking forward to the off season and all the chaos that comes with it?
There is no off season.
There's no off season. Basketball never sleeps, is what Nike once said.
Stops actually, but that's cool.
I screwed that up, didn't I? Right. Joe Hulbert, where can they find you on Twitter?
At Hulbert Joe.
Check him out. Draft expert. That's your new title. You're not a lead writer anymore. You're a double clutch draft expert. Mike Miller, where can they find you?
Mike Miller _time.
I love how to think about that. And mine is Matt Smashed, and follow the account at Double Clutch UK. We'll catch you next week, folks. Thank you for listening.